COOGS House. All right, Houston wins big on the road at SMU, sweeps the Ponies on the season, and Marcus Sasser with a big game in his hometown. Let's break it all down.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougars, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way we get the latest on the Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's good to see you again. We are at about 650 subscribers. When we get to 750, we're doing a giveaway every 250, right? We're going to give away the Galen Robinson designed Letterman jacket. We got a size XL to give away. So I know that's like a little limiting to some, but it maybe fits a little bit like a snug large. I don't know. Size XL to give away. We're going to give it away to someone when we get to 750. So hit subscribe down below so we can get 750 subs. And along the way, you got to be commenting and liking videos. That way we know you're in the contest. If you watch this whole video and you can't think of anything to say about beating the Ponies for a second time, tell me if you'd rather be delayed 12 hours in the airport or have your bags lost for a few days. All right. Now, in doing all of this, I admit that I think a lot of Cougar fans are looking forward to Sunday's game against Memphis. But we do need to wrap up what we're having against SMU because, frankly, that's probably the last time we'll play SMU in Dallas for the foreseeable future. And it's a rivalry I kind of enjoy winning. So I want to talk about that some. So in the first segment, we're going to talk about just some stars of the night, key performances, those kinds of things. Guys that, highlight real type of guys. Second segment's going to be looking at what was different in this game and the first game, because there were some differences. And there's a moment where we're like, oh God, don't blow this thing. And then the third segment, I want to kind of revisit this whole comparison of the basketball games and the football games. And then we might look ahead a little bit to Memphis over the weekend. So in the first segment, let's talk about some of the guys that really, really stood out. Now, I did game thread this like I always do. However, aside from commenting on the camera angle a couple times, there were stretches where it felt like both offenses were stagnant, which made offensive performances stick out a little bit. Emmanuel Sharp did not have his normal impact from beyond the arc, I should say. He was 2 of 6 from three-point line, which I guess is still 33%. That's below his average for sure. And honestly, with how many minutes he played 22 minutes on the night, I kind of thought he'd be more in the 3 for 7 kind of range, maybe 3 for 8. But I kind of thought he would be pulling that up a little bit. It gets more shots off from beyond the three-point arc because that's mostly what he shoots. But Emmanuel Sharp gets mentioned as one of our stars tonight because of the defensive intensity he brought. The reason he was able to play 22 minutes and take some of the load off of Tremont Mark and some of the load off of Marcus Sasser and some of the load off of Jamal Shead and fill in for the fact that obviously Ramon Walker is still using his red shirt on this season, and Terrence Arsenault hurt his ankle last week and is not able to play. He was able to stay on the floor because he was playing tremendous defense. He was really, really getting after defensively, diving on the floor for loose balls, poking at rebounds, getting the ball stripped out of people's hands. It has down the has no steals, but he must have had a deflection that led to a steal if I'm thinking about the play correctly. Anyway, I thought it was interesting to see the growth of Emmanuel Sharp's defense in this game. We think of him as a sharpshooter, no pun and little pun intended, but it was certainly nice to see him grow and develop on that. And remember, this guy had a traumatic broken leg 14 months ago. So that he's even running at this kind of speed and level and pace is kind of remarkable. Great to watch him get out there and run around. Jarace Walker, what can you say about this guy? He dominated the first game, and so there was part of me was wondering, could he have that kind of a game again? Clearly, SMU game planned him a little bit better this time around. He had just 14 points on 10 shots, but had 2 timely threes. Could have had a couple more if he made his free throws, but he had 4 rebounds and a pair of assists. But the biggest play of the night, a play that will probably make your SportsCenter top 10 as you're listening to this and you flip over to the TV. Yeah, I'm sure it's up there right now. Is to open up second half. Jamal Shead drove for a no-look lob, and he cocked that thing way, way back on top of it. That was quite a way to open the half. Really, really like silenced any crowd momentum that SMU had coming out of halftime, where they thought they could, talk themselves into having a chance. They did kind of have a chance later. We'll get to that second segment, but big momentum swinger from Jarace there. Tremont Mark had his, more mundane. He had 11 points on 8 shots. He's had better nights scoring basketball, and in his short career, because I guess he's what was it? Coach was saying he's like technically a third semester, fourth. I don't know. Coach counts his year a little differently. But in his 28 minutes, he had 11 points and 9 rebounds. Now, Tremont is 6'5" and long-limbed, but 9 rebounds from the small forward spot is not something I would ever think to guarantee. And that's an awesome impact from him because, frankly, SMU had more length than Houston did. Yes, they didn't start anyone else. Like, they were about 6'9", Houston about 6'9", but they were bigger at the other positions aside from center, and Tremont Mark getting after on the glass, and it was just hustle and effort. It wasn't like lucking into balls here or whatever. It was identifying where the ball's coming off the rim, sprinting to a spot, and leaping full out, body going horizontal on the ground at one point on one of them. I mean, just effort on rebounds. Great to see. Marcus Sasser in his last game in Dallas, he's from Red Oak, so unless you want to count the American Athletic Conference tournament in Fort Worth, all the Metroplex, but just up the road, up I-35 from his hometown in Dallas. He had 20 points and 20 points with 8 free throws because he was the guy making free throws on the stretch. Couple key threes, but the step back crossover 3 he had on TV, it was the top corner, was right in front of the Houston bench. Another crowd silencer. I mean, just he gets the ball, he takes a jab to his right foot, crosses back right to left, and the defense looks like they have no idea where he's going. They just lost where Marcus Sasser was while he had the ball right in front of them. Step back for 3. Pro move if there were any in the game. Tremendous effort scoring basketball. But I think the reason I also put him on my star list here is because, frankly, down the stretch, we'll get to the second segment, but SMU put on a full court press, and he was kind of the guy Houston had to rely. The reason he got those free throws was he was the guy Houston had to rely on to break the press. I don't know that Houston can hold on and win this game without him in there breaking said press. So shouts to Marcus Sasser there. And then Jamal Shead. Now, I could talk about Jamal a lot and frequently, but at halftime, Jamal had 11 points, and Houston had built a big lead, and they kind of rode that cushion for a long time, right? The other thing I'll say, too, is that in a game where most of Houston's good possessions, Houston made 27 shots and had 17 assists, right? Most of Houston's good shots came off of assisted baskets. Jamal Shead had 8 of the 17 assists and just 1 turnover. True point guard play at the highest level. We're going to talk about this a lot this season. We've talked about it a lot this season to date. But the growth of him into a true traditional point guard and the role he fills on this team now, and his assist to turnover ratio for a guy that has the ball in his hands as much as Jamal does is just remarkable. He's a junior. I think he'll be back next season as a senior. I don't think he's going to pros yet, but this dude is a pro basketball player at some level, and I can't believe that NBA scouts continue to look past him because he doesn't have crazy long arms. He's not 6'4". But he gives the basketball to his teammates in their spots to score and doesn't give it to anyone else. And that's just what you need out of a point guard that also guards the other team's best player for large stretches of the game. Like, he's a tremendous, impactful player that just impacts winning in a way that's truly remarkable. And I enjoy watching Central Texas zone Jamal Shead play so much. So shout out to Jamal Shead there. Now, I want to get some into the X's and O's about what happened specifically in this game that made it a little bit different than the first time the Ponies and the Cougs met up a little over a month ago. But first, let's talk about our buddies at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is the best sports book in America. It's the #1 sports book in America. And we're at the midway point of the NBA season. It's the perfect time to download FanDuel. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. It's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sports app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money line to point scores to 3-trained, etc. Now, this weekend, I don't know if I'm going to put money on Team Giannis or Team LeBron. Although LeBron has won most of these All-Star Weekend matchups. They have locked the spread because you don't know who's on both teams yet because they're doing the draft before the game starts. And I would argue that's the way to do it. It's like a pickup game that way. But what I will say is they set the over-under at 323.5. I'm definitely going over here. A couple things. one, I understand that the Elam ending has brought the over-under number down in recent years because 24 is low scoring for the fourth quarter, typically in this game. But the last handful of NBA All-Star games have been places like Vegas, right? Places that people like to go party. And I don't mean to be judging what they're doing the night before for the weekend, but I imagine it's not the highest level of focus on scoring the basketball. In Salt Lake City, a lot of those distractions are fairly limited, we'll say. And I think the first three quarters will be noticeably more high scoring and even better shooting than the last handful of All Star games will be. So I understand that the Elam ending has made the fourth quarter a lower scoring quarter than traditional All Star games. But I think the first three All Star games and first three quarters of the All Star game in Salt Lake will be such high scoring quarters that I'm going over 323.5. I know it's crazy going on the over an All Star game. Yeah, stop shaking your head at me. It's a good reason. But I'm taking the over in the All Star game, and I'm doing it at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel lets you combine bets for a chance at bigger payouts with the same game parlay. So once the teams get picked, you can go in and actually add stuff in as well. Don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked on. That's FanDuel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so I said in the second segment, I want to do a little bit of looking at what was different because this game was different. The first game, Houston won by 34 points. And I said in the preview, I said in the post game when it happened back on January 5th, 34 points is closer than the game ever felt, right? Houston came out and blitzed them early, ran away with it early, and never looked back. It was 24-2 at one point in the 5 or 6 minutes in, right? Just nothing, right? Just kind of coasted after that. Did a starter play, one starter play to more than 25 minutes. That was Marcus Sasser, played 26 minutes in that game, right? In the second game these two teams played, all of the starters played 26 or more minutes, right? And frankly, Shead and Sasser each played 35. Houston wins by 15, 80-65. Now, I told you guys yesterday in the FanDuel spot, I thought it'd be more like a 20-point game. And Houston shot 61% from the free throw line. Had they just made their stinking free throws, it probably is. So I feel make your free throws. But I say to say that like something clearly changed. And it's not just changing home venues because that's not a 20-point difference. Going from a 34-point win to a 15-point win tells us a little bit more about how SMU's grown than it tells us about anything about Houston. Now, I do think there were trap game elements to what happened to Houston on Thursday night. Memphis on Sunday is the biggest game of the conference season. And I say that knowing they lost to Temple once, right? That's Lenardi's got them as the team in. You win both those games at this point in the season, especially you're probably a number one seed in the tournament, right? I think that could have played something to it. But Kelvin Sampson noted the ball movement as well. He said they only had 17 assists, or he said that they only got their good baskets off of assists in this game. They had 27 baskets and 17 assists. I think that, when you factor in, like, you got some guys, you're going to get a couple ISO buckets, that some are going to take one too many dribbles and kill the assist. All those things count. And so I think that's fairly fair. But in the first game, Houston ironically also had 17 assists and 31 made baskets. So I don't know that that's necessarily the biggest indicator, like the assist, the raw number. And I don't mean to say Sampson no idea is talking about. He's a very good basketball coach. Hall of Fame basketball coach, knows a lot more than me. But I do think what's interesting in that is not necessarily the assists, but how they happen. There weren't a whole lot of hockey assists. There weren't a whole lot of pass to the pass kind of movements. And to be fair, SMU played a lot less zone. And since SMU played a lot less zone defense, there's a lot more dribbling involved. Moreover, the actions on the high screens that Houston was running were trying to get the ball into the nail to kick out to the opposite corner or to kick out to the opposite slot for threes, right? Houston shot the ball 33.3% from three. That's pretty strong. But what I think that's interesting about looking at that is that what you'd hope that would lead to is catch and shoot. But Houston attempted just 30 of their 55 shots from beyond the three-point line. I know that sounds like a high percentage, but for this team and that strategy, that actually means that SMU is kind of running them into more of a mid-range or in more like pound pull-up kind of looks and stuff like that. And those are harder shots. They're not in the same kind of rhythm. And frankly, it takes a really, really, really good shooter to be able to pound pull up in any direction. Now, you can do like a drill where you just do pound pull ups in the mid range, and that's one thing, but it takes a really, really good shooter to do that in a reactionary sense live. And so I think that's more what Sampson means by the best shots or the assisted shots in his post game talk and his post game availability. I do think it's kind of weird that the assist numbers are the exact same between games. Do you think so? Tell me down below. The other thing I think is interesting in this one is, like I mentioned in my frustration with the betting, Houston shot 79% from the free throw line in their first matchup with SMU at home. Admittedly, home baskets, you understand it. You feel, the line of sight, all that kind of stuff's normal. On the road in this game, they shot 61.5% from the free throw line. Had they shot roughly 80% from the free throw line in this game, they would have added, when you factor in like one-on-ones, because I know both Marcus and Jarace missed some one-on-one, missed the front end of one-on-ones. You could easily add 8 to 10 points just on putting in free throws. And I know that we will labor this point a lot whenever Houston plays below their own standard, but that's going to hurt at some point, and I just hope it doesn't hurt that bad. Now, in this game, Houston wins by 15. They make those 8 extra points. I guess they win by 23. And so it's like, that's gravy, and Ainsworth wins its bet. But what I do think is interesting there is that it wasn't. Okay, there's one key player in the lineup that got free throws that shot a poor percentage from free throws. Like Reggie Chaney went 0 for 2. Emmanuel Sharp went 1 for 2. Javier Francis went 1 for 2, right? Those happen. Jamal Shead didn't get any free throws. I wish you got a call here or there, but he didn't. Juwan Roberts didn't get any free throws. I wish you got a call here or there, but he didn't. Jarace Walker went 0 for 2 from the free throw line, both in 1-and-1 situations. Tremont Mark, 6 of 7. Marcus Sasser, 8 of 11. Of the starting 5, that 0 for 2, which could have been 4 for 4 because of 1-and-1s, is really, really important and really, really sticks out. And Jarace Walker's a teenager. I'm not saying it's easy to do on the road in a hostile environment, although SMU Pony fans, do y'all show up to home games? But I do think that while we're giving the crowd a hard time, the different environment hurts. And frankly, we've seen games where Jarace shoots the ball very well. This could have just been the anomaly. But that did hurt the Cougs as far as their offense goes, as far as their scoring numbers go, because if you have 84-65, suddenly it's a 19-point game. That looks a little bit different, right? And frankly, if he does that and Jamal Shead gets, 4 free throws and goes 3 for 4, suddenly it's a 22-point game. It's a whole lot different. Calls didn't quite get Jamal Shead's free throw line, but that's neither here nor there. I do think that if Houston had shot the ball better from 3 or gotten threes off, say they shoot 38% or 40% because Emmanuel Sharp gets 1 or 2 more off, or I don't know, let's say Jamal Shead goes 2 of 4 instead of 1 of 4 or something, right? Then suddenly the SMU Mustangs probably change their defense up, and that leads to different type of offense. And, we saw what Houston did to them in their zone last time. The last way this thing was noticeably different or discernibly different in how they played it was down the stretch. Let me make sure I pull my stats here to make sure I'm right. But Houston was up fairly comfortably large. And we kind of felt like, okay, this one's in the bag. We got Houston on Sunday. No one rolled their ankle. And then SMU goes into a press. And I'm trying to pull it up exactly because it's about just under 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes, right? Emery Lanier makes his, is that son of Rob Lanier? Let me know in the comments below, because that'd be the coach's kid. Makes his free throws, and then immediately they start fouling Houston in the press, not necessarily on purpose, but at that point, Houston is up 15. And the press, right, turned the ball over just enough times, and Houston gave up some dead leg defense open shots or fouls for free throws, like JV had a couple fouls or whatever, in those final 4.5 minutes, where the lead was suddenly cut to 11, and then 12, and hovered around 10 for a second, with about 2.5 minutes left. Now, in college basketball, 12 points is 4 shots if you've got a good shooter, and SMU has a couple. And so there was a moment there where it felt much, much closer than the game had been for most of the second half. And that press did look like it rushed or worried Houston a little bit, because there were several times where instinctively, the ball goes through the net and Jamal Shead would take it out. Or the ball goes through the net and Tremont Mark would take it out. And those are guys that are very actively involved in Houston's press break. And then because of that, they'd get the ball to Sasser in the corner by the SMU bench. And Houston was just kind of relying on Sasser being Sasser to get out of the trap. He did that a lot of times. He got fouled in doing it and got to the free throw line a couple of different times. However, the way they handle the press does worry me. Memphis is going to press on Sunday, right? And other teams that will watch that will say, hey, maybe we can get them in some spots with this throughout the game. Maybe not press the whole game, all 94 feet, because Houston's athletic and in shape and deep and all of those things. But like we can throw them spots, right? And that worries me some by the way this one went, because that press and defensive intensity, SMU never gave up, did not give up in this game. That could shorten windows. And if it's a better team than the 9-18 SMU Mustangs, that could be worrisome, right? That's the part I'm taking out of this. I'm like, oh man, don't make me pull more hair out. I don't got a whole lot left. Don't make me pull more hair out, right? Now, that said, you could see in the way Sampson was talking about things throughout timeouts and stuff down the stretch that I think it's safe to say they'll intend on fixing some of those. He was cool, calm, collected at the start of that 5-minute run. And then by about halfway through was just like, listen, y'all are too good a basketball team. Let this thing happen. It was ripping into people a little bit, right? I will say when Jerick Phelps made a 3 to cut it to 74-63, there was a part of me that was like, crap, he's going to go off right here, isn't he? Like that was a minute 48 left. He had hit a transition pull-up 3 right after Tremont Mark free throws. He cut the lead a little bit. And I was like, oh, yikes. And so, if that's Memphis this weekend, I'm probably worried again. Before we get into some weird coincidences, I guess in the third segment, we're going to get some weird coincidences between this game and the football game, and then start to lead into Memphis, which will be a preview in a moment. So let's get into that. In the football game, and I did this after the first basketball game on January 5th. The football game was 77 points for SMU, 63 points for Houston. Okay. The first basketball game was 87 points for Houston and 53 points for SMU. That's exactly 140 to 140 if you're combining the two scores. Exactly. That's bananas. How did that work out that way? It's exactly 140, 140. So, in a lot of ways, the second basketball game tonight was the rubber match between the men's athletic programs, and Houston won by 15 points. Now, interestingly enough in that, Houston wins by 15 points in the combo. Houston, in both basketball games, outscored the SMU football offense. But SMU on Thursday finally scored more points in basketball than SMU's football team scored in their football matchup. Weird, right? 65-6. Basketball in the second game for SMU, 65. Football for Houston, 63. Houston win the overall matchup by 15 points. I at least feel good about. If we're never going to see these guys again, I can feel confident, my head held high that unlike a year ago, unlike a couple years ago, we won the matchup on the whole. I wish you won the football game. You can go back and watch the recap to that one because I have my concerns about that football game. But anyway, we won. The other thing that's interesting here is I don't know how often you have games like that add up to something like exactly 140, exactly 140. But I do think based on looking at things on Twitter, other people were picking up on this too. Like this was an important game for them. And I think those people are mostly just Houston folks. It was 140 to 140. And I don't think that the Ponies understood that aspect of it. Not that it matters for anything outside of bragging rights, but you saw and heard the Who's House chants in Dallas, and I think that's the bragging right point in and of itself, right? So fun time there. Obviously, the football score in the Memphis game was a little bit different. So we got 2 games against Memphis in the next 3 weeks. 3 weeks. No. 2 weeks. 3 weeks. The next 3 weeks. And so in doing that, I guess we got to kind of recalculate how those things go. I will say that I did see, and this is why I haven't done the pregame kind of stuff yet, Kendrick Davis did not finish the Memphis UCF game on Thursday night because he was in a boot, right? That's one college basketball score that will impact us. Memphis escaped against UCF, scoring with 7 seconds left to win that basketball game. And I still don't understand how they stole the ball with that. That's not here nor there. But Kendrick Davis, their leading scorer, one of the top scorers in the country, he missed the end of the game in a boot and walked off the court in crutches, per reports from people in Memphis. I kind of like to play him with him on the floor, but I also kind of want to win. I'd like to beat them with him on the floor, I guess, is the perfect option. So we'll see. We'll see what his availability is on Sunday. I will say my intention is to record some sort of a preview that comes out over the weekend before that game. The game's at 2:00 on Sunday. No Super Bowl, no football window, so I guess the XFL is on, but go Gamblers, I guess. But is that USFL? I'm getting them all confused now. There is non-NFL football this weekend, but the big game is Houston Memphis on Sunday, and then on Sunday, and the All-Star game is the NBA All-Star game is that night. The other thing I'll say too is other scores that impact, obviously, on Wednesday night, Tennessee beating Alabama is fairly big for Houston, and then on Thursday night, Maryland beat Purdue because apparently everyone beat Purdue now. That happened, so theoretically, this will be another moment where Houston is playing on Sunday for the number one overall ranking on Monday. Now, I've talked ad nauseum at this point across the season about why that kind of matters. SMU being in the conference they're in needs to have national recognition that they're good, because they are really good, but otherwise they could get seeded poorly. And I understand that we all care more about being number one in April, right? But a big part of that is seeding and what your region looks like and bracket looks like. And to have the better play at that, you need to have people understanding, accepting how good you are. And I see the A people as a way to look at that. And I think that if things break right, beating Memphis should get us there. Again, I'd like to get a preview out. It'll be a bonus linked episode, so 10 to 15 minutes sometime before Sunday's basketball game. I'm waiting on a couple things, including any word out on what Kendrick Davis's injury are. So you can find me on Twitter to let me know those kinds of things. If you see something, don't keep it a secret. Share it and spread it around. You can find me on Twitter at Painsworth512. That's PAINSWORTH512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all your various social media handles. Be happy to talk Cougs, basketball, football, conference realignment, Big 12, all those kind of fun things. Rockets, Astros. I guess we're in the Rockets and the Rising Stars game. We can talk about that as well. I got Wall of Sneakers, Miami Hip Hop, whatever you want. I'll talk about it whenever you find me at Painsworth512, PAINSWORTH512. Thank you all so much for being locked on Cougs, your first listen of the day. For your second listen, I'm going to recommend going to listen to Locked On College Basketball, because what I'm about to go do is hear what they have to say about Purdue continuing to lose basketball games after I heard all month long about how great they were. So go check them out. It's a national college basketball show that puts out podcast episodes each day from the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Cougs is also a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.